It's interesting you mentioned how there different writers have different perspectives on this and added to it. It sort of is biblical in that sense, where you had the different gospels all aligning, trying to be a cohesive God.
Yeah.
Um, I find that interesting. In fact, I was listening to an interview I think the other day from Isaac Asimov, who said that the Bible was a repository for uh, the great poetry and ethical developments. I wouldn't agree with the qualitative assessment, but I thought that it was interesting how he mentioned the Bible and its uses and how it doesn't really conform to one God. And in fact, I was telling this to someone else that I think that the Bible is actually one of the best portraits of evil in God in the Old Testament
Mm.
because of how God, especially in the book of Job, is essentially the villain of that. But it even though and Satan seduces God into uh, treating Job as badly as he can to test Job. I think that what you're doing by using these different Rayleigh perspectives and deconstructing them is an interesting thing. It's sort of like making all of these perspectives into one. And I find that with the title too is an interesting usage of that, where it has the double meaning, just like the Two Fools play, where it's not just blood ties or blood loss, but perhaps something that goes beyond that.
Yeah. Well, the watcher who people who would be familiar with my plays and familiar with early stuff as Danny Wagner, this also gets a resolution here because in the end, after Gawain has saved the day, the Watcher appears, and I think once or twice early in the plays, there's been mention of the Great Watcher that Gawain has heard about, and Gawain seems to be a no nonsense guy. He's been dealing with his own interior anger and royal and stuff. He's carrying the fact that he has not only killed possibly an innocent person, although we get the sense in this play that wasn't an innocent person, so his guilt was probably ill placed. But certainly he probably has killed innocent people before, probably not by choice, but by happenstance of just being a warrior. So he's got that roiling about in him, and he finally meets the Great Watch, and the Great Watch is like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Things happen. Don't worry about it so much. And as they end off walking, the Great Watcher is in a sense a comfort to Gawain, and he even says at the end, you've always been my favorite character, and as a way to sort of bolster, because Gawain by the end comes to realize what a couple of other characters have inklings. It seems that Dagonet may have an inkling that he's a literary character. Uh, but at the end, Sir Gawain has come to realize that, oh, I'm not real in a sense. So after all of the royals that he's been through emotionally, psycho emotionally, after all that he's seen with these portraits of evil, he's learned, for example, that Modred isn't really his brother, uh, as it's revealed. We also get the death of Sir Agravain too, who goes in league with Modred, and ends up against Sir Gawain. In the original sources, Gawain ends up dying during the final end of Camelot because he has sided against King Arthur, or he sided with King Arthur against Lancelot, and because Lancelot is the hero, Gawain ends up dead. Here, Lancelot's not even in it. I reduced him to a tertiary, a secondary, a small secondary, maybe tertiary character in these plays. Now Gawain finds out that all of it has been basically just for show. And you have to wonder sometimes, anyone at the end of this, if they were ever to do like at an outdoor festival or something, to do like these 5 plays in a row, it's sort of like, well, boy, that's a load off of Gawain's head, or is it? What is he thinking now, knowing that he's not quote unquote real? Who knows?
I thought that it was probably the best use of the Danny Wagner character in that final scene. And the Danny Wagner character is just briefly sketched throughout this play. He's also not as much of a hindrance. I find that he can sort of be a weight on some of your plays, whereas in some of these ones where he's just creating the perspective and being the end to the play, I think that that works a lot better because he can be a bit overwhelming when you read one play after another. It's sort of like when you watch a Ozu film or something and you see the same themes replicated 50 times over. You get tired of watching Ozu after a while.
Well, that's why his scenes in the great plays that are coming up to talk about are optional. I think almost all of them it's optional because but I there is a reason to use it, and that's especially with these kinds of plays is that if again you were doing like 2 or 3 plays and doing it at some you know play fest, some festival where they were going to do the plays of Schneider, it would give a linkage to it. Uh, but yeah, I know that once I finish this sci-fi novel I'm working on, which will take most of the rest of this year probably, when I go back to doing plays, I'm probably going to do some more historical plays where Danny Wagner may only be referenced the way, say, Paulie Maravelli is referenced here. So it'll be in the
That would be a good idea.
It would be the Danny
for your readers. Yes,
it would be still in the Danny Wagner verse, but anyway.
He's